Your presenter today is my colleague, Daryl Favreau, Senior Implementation and Education Professional. We are fortunate to have him presenting with us today. He is well-versed in all the analytic tools that we offer here at Global. His knowledge and his patience has earned him the title as one of Global's best. Our webinar today is titled Back to Basics, Part 1, and is intended for new users with exposure to Spreadsheet Server but no formal training, and users that just want a quick refresher course. The topics that we will be covering today is an overview of the Spreadsheet Server functionality, how to use the Build a Template, Formula Assistant and the options associated with Formula Assistant, drill down options, as well as the many features that exist with the segment list. Due to the amount of material that we will cover today and time constraints, I ask that any questions you have, please submit via the Q&A box located in the bottom right corner of your screen, and we will follow up after the webinar. This is recorded and will be available on the customer portal of our website within 7 to 10 business days, so you can review at your convenience. Lastly, there will be a short survey at the end of this webinar, and it will further our efforts to provide future quality webinars if you will complete. It's at this time that I will turn it over to Daryl.
Thank you, Lisa. It's my pleasure to work with the group and present this Spreadsheet Server product. As Lisa had mentioned, I'm with the client services team at Global Software, and my primary role within Global Software is training and implementation. As I go through my presentation, just as reference for information, the information on the screen may be small for viewing. You have the option on your WebEx screen to choose the plus arrow or minus arrow on the right side to allow the screen to adjust the size. As I switch over to Microsoft Excel, all the functionality that we're going to cover today is within Microsoft Excel. So what is Spreadsheet Server? Spreadsheet Server is a Microsoft Excel add-in, a piece of software developed by Global Software, used to return data, different elements of the data, from your general ledger or ERP system. Today, primarily, we're going to work and discuss using Spreadsheet Server to return a general ledger balance. Based on licensing, the ribbon Spreadsheet Server will show up on your Excel add-in. The different features available within the ribbon become available based on licensing. Please consult your customer service representative for your licensing and what features you have and feature sets your groups are authorized to see. Based on feature sets, different buttons will be grayed out, but the Enable, Disable button will always be available. This button is used to define whether the product will calculate or not calculate the Excel-based formulas. So now that we've got the tool enabled and we're ready to utilize the tool, we're going to insert our first formula. This formula is used to return a general ledger balance. To launch that, I choose the wand from the Spreadsheet Server ribbon. This wand will open the Build a Template. The Build a Template is utilized to give us an entry point to load data or to load the formula within the spreadsheet itself. You'll notice here on the top left of the Build a Template, we are now seeing 6 of the available 8 formulas that Spreadsheet Server can return. The formula we're going to work with is called a GXL, and the GXL returns a single general ledger balance from the ERP system. Global Software Spreadsheet Server supports 100+ different general ledgers. So based on your settings, the parameters required will be different. In this scenario, for this presentation, I'm using a general ledger by the name of Lawson. But many of the feature sets within the formula GXL hold true no matter what ERP system you're utilizing. So for me to start this process, I need to start populating some information. First off, I launched the Build a Template from worksheet number 1, and we see that here at the top. Again, I also launched from my starting cell of A1. I can alter that if I choose, but based on the information provided is where the formula would get inserted into the spreadsheet. So next I'm going to go and look at what other parameters can I change to get the balance that I'm interested in. I want an actual balance, so for my ledger I will keep an A for the balance type. The year in which I want to return my balance is 2005. The format is PER. I want the balance for an individual period. Later on we'll talk about some additional formats that you can utilize to get the balances for year-to-date or even for a quarter. Beyond that, I'm going to move to the bottom section. Every ERP system has account segments. These segments are defined based on your chart of accounts, and they're utilized to return the balances you're after. So for my scenario, I want to use the account of 21 star. That star represents a wild card. We'll hear more about that wild card a little later on. Additionally, I want to turn the balances based off of all accounts for 21 star. I can alter additional information if I choose, but just to get the first formula in, these are the parameters that I want to pass. Now I'm going to discuss the layout of the formula once you insert it. I can lay my account segments to be at the individual row or to see different segments in the header or the row. For my scenario, I'm going to put my company and my chart name in the column headings, leaving the other segments at the row. Based on this radio button, do not clear the sheet, I'm going to insert the data directly into my spreadsheet. So I've clicked the insert, and now I have a new formula in Excel. This formula is cell referenced. We can see the parameters here that are being referenced. If I change any of these values, you'll see my balance automatically updates. That update is based on Excel calculation. If your workbook is set to manual calc mode, that formula will not calculate until you tell it. I'm going to change my period back to 4, and I'm returned back to that same balance I had. I can change any one of these parameters to get the balance that would make sense for what I'm trying to return. Now, I use the Build a Template to insert the information into my spreadsheet. Well, after doing the insertion, I don't want to go back to the Build a Template to reinsert another formula. I just want to modify this formula to get the layout that I'm interested in. An example of that layout is I want the account sub to show up at the column heading. Well, in the Build a Template, I selected that row column button. But here, I'm going to simply use the Excel function of cut, and I'm going to cut the variable, the parameter, and its description. And you'll notice now when I go to the formula and select in the formula bar, the reference is now being maintained. So I can now get rid of this empty column C. So simply cutting and moving the formula can adjust where the parameters are going. Again, a cut was done, not a copy. An example, now I'm ready to start thinking about, well, I want to create additional rows of data. So I did a simple copy and paste. I copied row 14 to row 15. And you'll notice my balance is not the same as may be expected. If I click in the formula bar, you'll notice that my cell referencing is off. The cell referencing is presented by using the Excel anchoring functionality. So I need to anchor my parameter. So I delete the formula. I'll go back to my formula and choose the Formula Assistant. Once I launch the Formula Assistant, you'll also notice on the top left that additional formulas have shown up. So based on your licensing, we'll determine what formulas appear. In the Formula Assistant, we are seeing the cell references that are made for this formula to function. And we'll notice that when I look at the sub-account, the anchoring, or the $sign, is in front of the D, representing lock the column. Well, I want that anchoring to be in front of the row. In this situation, in front of the 12. I will remove the $sign in front of the D and reinsert my formula. And now when I copy that formula down, my cell references have been maintained and are accurate. So keeping in mind, the anchoring can come into play in many different ways. I'm going to go back and launch that Formula Assistant. Once the Formula Assistant opens, I've made a determination in my spreadsheet that my balance type that's located here in D1 will never move. So I'm going to use the Excel functionality and put a $sign in front of the D. Now I manually type that $sign, but again, standard Excel functionality is maintained. I can go to the next cell, which represents my budget number, and I'm going to use the F4 key to cycle through the 4 available anchors that I have. And I'm going to absolute anchor that in so that never moves from that reference. I'm going to repeat that F4 function for the year. I'm going to leave the format and the period in the correct as they're anchored to the rows. I'm going to change my company to be also anchored absolute. I'm going to leave my account unit alone, my account alone, but I'm going to anchor my sub-account and also anchor my chart name. So I've absolute anchored this information. So if I go and do an insert now and copy that formula down, we'll notice it's still maintained. But if I want to now start copying it across columns, I can do the following. I'm going to type in the format here in column E and change the period to 5 for column E. And based on that anchoring being correct, if I copy that formula over, you'll see that the cell references are now maintained and are flowing appropriately. Now that I have a general ledger balance, I may want to work with that balance and see what detail made that balance up. I have the ability to do that using the drill down functionality. I'm going to select this balance here for column D, and I'm going to click the magnifying glass that allows me to drill down into the data. Now I'm seeing results for that drill down. As you can see here in the header, it is for the balance type A, the year 2005, and the balance matches what was happening in cell D14. I have these detailed rows of all the balances that make up my balance. In this case, the different companies, account units, and accounts. I can sort that information by clicking a column heading, and I can apply a sort. I can reverse that sort by also clicking the heading. Sort is one of 3 features available within this drill down panel. I can also go into the white space below any of the headings, and I can type in a value, and in this case I've applied a filter, and I'm filtering and only seeing those companies that start with 40. I'll backspace off of that filter, and I'll go to the account unit field, and I'm going to put in 1050, and again I'm only seeing those that are related to 1050. I'll backspace off of that filter, and now I'm looking at all my data again. The last feature within the panel itself is grouping. If I click and hold a heading and drag it to the gray area above and let go, I've now added a grouping. If I expand the plus for any given group, I can see the detail that made up that group. If I choose, I can add additional layers of grouping. So in this case, I'm clicking, holding, and dragging the account unit in. And now I've added another layer to my grouping. So now that I have my data, I'm going to close this drill down and come back. I can go to any other balance and drill down on that balance. So I have the functionality of drill down available in any of these GXL formulas. I can choose to select a row by coming to the very far left column and selecting that record. If I choose, I can right-click and choose Select All, and now I've selected all rows. Additionally, from that right-click, I can copy to clipboard with headings and then come to my Excel workbook and paste that information in. This information is a snapshot in time. The balances are not going to change. The information found in this will never vary. If I drill down again, the data will be new based on the balances that I have looked at. So I'm going to go back to my sheet 1 where my formulas are, and I'm going to repeat that drill down. But this time I've chosen that I don't want all the rows. I only want certain rows. By using standard Excel functionality, I can select the first row I want, hold my Shift key, select the last row I want, and I can have just consecutive rows. But if I then hold my Control key, I can select non-consecutive rows. So I can actually get the data that I'm interested in. I can then right-click, copy to clipboard with headings, and go to a new sheet and paste my data in. And again, this is a snapshot in time. Now, when I'm in my drill down, I'm going to drill down again here. When I'm in my drill down window, I also have this options button on the top left. So I'm going to select this options button, and there's a little push pin. So I want to lock that window open. That push pin will be found throughout the product for any flyout windows that you want to maintain and hold open while you're working within the grids or the panels themselves. So you'll notice here I do have the select all and also the copy to clipboard information here. So I have multiple ways of getting to select the data that I'm interested in. Well, I'm going to go back and do my grouping based on company. And I've decided I want to export my data based on this grouping. I'll simply come here and do select all, copy to Excel with layout, and I get a dialog panel. So in this dialog, I need to tell the tool, Spreadsheet Server, where I'm going to insert the information into my spreadsheet. So I've chosen Worksheet, and I'll name this sheet, and I'll call it Export. So a new sheet will get created called Export. It's going to send the data to cell A1. It's going to include some column headings, and it's going to do some conversion of formatting for non-numeric cells. It's going to do the grouping based on company, and it's going to subtotal by the amount. These are some of the default settings. But an additional setting is if I want to add the outlining for subtotals with Excel, I can simply check this box. Now I'm ready to export. And when I click the Export button, you'll notice in Excel I have a new sheet called Export, and the groupings that I had built are now exported. Again, this is data. This is a snapshot in time. This data is not going to vary and is not going to change. If I were to repeat that drill down, I would then be looking at new information. So far I've shown you how to drill down to get to the detail that makes up an individual balance. You also have the ability with the drill down to go to another layer of information. So I've drilled down on my balance, and if I select this first row and right-click, I can go to the journals for that selected row. You'll notice I get a new tab at the top here once my journals arrive. So I've got information specific to the journal entries for that balance. You'll notice I can go back to my next tab. I can come back and I can locate and drill down on another balance. So I'll select this balance and do drill down for journals. And now I'll get another tab here at the top for those journal entries. The same output availability is there, so I can do a select all and copy to clipboard with headings. I could do some groupings, or I could just get the standard data and drop it directly into Excel. So all of those export options, filters, sorting, and grouping options are all still available when I'm working with this. I can then close each individual tab as I choose and go back and do another drill down if I choose, or I can simply come to the top right and do the X and close all drill down windows. So I have the ability to look at the data and work with the data in the way that I want to interact with it. Next, I'm going to show you the ability to drill down on multiple columns. So I have columns, one row here with two columns for two different periods. If I select both of those columns and click the drill down icon, I have now drilled down in what we call a multi-column drill down. You'll notice when I did 2 columns, I get this third column, which is a variance. I can still do all the changes and the copying and exporting of the data as I've done before. So with multi-column drill down, I can have as many columns as I choose. So I'm going to add another column. And I'm going to copy my formula over. And based on Excel anchoring, I know I'm going to get a balance that is accurate from my system. I'll highlight all 3 columns and again do a drill down. And you'll notice now I have the 3 columns of data and I don't have that variance column. Based on the layout of my report, I could be drilling down on 1 year. I could be drilling down on multiple years. So it depends on the information that I've returned the balance on. I'm going to copy this column D, E, and F and paste it in H, I, and J. And I'm going to change the format in column H to QTR, representing I want quarter, and in this case, quarter number 1. So now I've got a balance of quarter number 1. I'm going to go to column I, and I'm going to change it to YTD. And now I have a balance of periods 1 through, in this case, 5. So using PER, QTR, or YTD, you'll be able to return the balances in which you're interested in seeing the data for. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove that data one more time and proceed on to the next step. I've shown you how to drill down to that panel, how to look at the data and manipulate and work with it within that panel screen. I'm now going to show you how to do a drill down to worksheet. The drill down to worksheet functions very similar to the drill down to panel. The only difference is the data is now put directly into my spreadsheet in a table format. So to do this, I simply select the balance that I'm interested in. I go to the bottom half of the drill down button and I click. Using my mouse, I hover over drill down, I hover over worksheet, and I click results. My data is automatically sent into a spreadsheet, a new sheet within this workbook. And again, this data is just values. It's a snapshot in time. But this time it tells me who created that here in row 3, the date and the time it was created. Where the information came from can be found in the link here in row 2. So I can simply select it and it takes me back to where I was at. So the drill down to worksheet allows me to get that data directly into Excel where I may want it to begin with. So I'm going to switch over to the next column here and I'm going to repeat that. So by selecting the balance, doing the drop down, hovering over drill down, hovering over worksheet, and clicking results, it's going to go off and find those balances and drop them into my spreadsheet. Make note, the sheet was reused. So if you intend on keeping the data, you may want to rename that data. I'm going to name this month 5. And now if I select that link and go back to my sheet, and I'll go to period number 6 and repeat, drill down to worksheet, results, I now have a new sheet and my month 5 is still available. So by renaming those sheets, I can continually keep that. If I go back to my original sheet, earlier I showed you how to do a multi-column drill down. If I do that drill down to worksheet on a multi-column, the data will be sent directly to the worksheet as before. At this time, I'll get the different columns, and that if I do 2, I'll get the variance. Anything beyond 2, I will not get that variance column. So as I go back, I want to also make note that I can get the drill down to journal worksheet. So if I'm on a balance, and in this case, I'm going to go ahead and select the balance, do the drop down for drill down, hover over drill down, hover over worksheet, and select journals. And now The tool is going off and getting all of the GL journals for that given period for all of those accounts. Again, this data is loaded into a table. It is a snapshot in time. Because it's loaded to a table, I automatically have the ability to do filters and groupings based on that information. So sending your data to the table is very beneficial because then I can then begin working with it. Next, I'm going to actually go and show you some functionality here that's available within the tool. And in this case, we've been doing the drill down to see the detail that made up a balance. But in the scenario that I'm going to present now, I don't want that detail to go to a sheet or a spreadsheet. I need it here, directly in the worksheet I'm working in. So I'm going to go to this row here, row 15. So far, it's just a duplication of row 14, but I'm going to make a simple change. I'm going to type in a range of accounts. By putting in that decimal, I have now set that I want a range. When I hit enter, I'm looking at the balances for all accounts that fall between that range. So I've showed you the wildcard means give me all. I've showed you another variation of that wildcard here, which shows you how to create saying I want accounts that start with 2-1, and then I don't care what follows, but I want everything that starts with 2-1. And in this scenario, I'm doing a range. So it's including the first value through the last value. So I'm going to select a balance in that row. And by using the following functionality called Expand GL Row, and you'll locate that here in your ribbon, it will now go to each one of those balances it finds in the row, and it will expand the detail into the spreadsheet you're in. So in this situation, it has expanded the data directly below. If I click on any one of these formulas, you'll notice they are formulas. They're not just value. And I can drill down. I can export. I can do a variety of functionality with that data. When I'm done with the data, I can simply use the collapse GL row function, and the data will drop off. So I can expand or collapse the data based on what I would like to see. In this case, I've expanded it on the row 14. The data content within row 14 is much greater than what was located in 15. You'll notice the expand time was a little longer. So be aware of the data that you're going to expand on. You want to be aware that there may be expanding data that is going to take a long time to calculate. So I caution you. When you're done with your data, simply do the collapse GL row, and the information will drop off. And if I scroll back up into my spreadsheet, you can see that I am now back and I have the data set that I started with. So now I'm going to talk about the segment list functionality within the tool. Segment list gives me the ability to create a name for any of the given segments that I wish to use. So in this case, I want to name this range of accounts so that I don't have to recall what the values themselves are, but what the range is or the name is. So I'm going to copy that and paste that row below. I'm going to delete the value in the account field because I'm going to now start the build process. So while actively and where I want the segment list name to go, I'll select the cell and choose the segment list functionality. Once I'm in the screen, I can now name, and I'm going to call this My List. I'll give it a description of My Space List, and this time I'm going to use uppercase for the first letters. I'm going to click the green plus here to add the list, and now my list is available. I can now come to the bottom and add values to this list. So the values that I'm going to add are the same that we were using before, accounts ranging from 21010 decimal through 21050. And I'll click the green plus here to add that to the list. I'll use the icon here at the top left to insert the list into the current cell. And you'll notice in cell B16, my list has shown up. When I close the segment list, my formula calculates, and I can see the values in those balances based off of that list. So I have the ability to name a list and apply the values that I want to utilize for that list. So an additional formula is if I want to bring back the description for that list. So I'm going to type in this formula, equal SSLDESC, open parentheses, and select the list name, close parentheses, and now I've brought back that description. So I have the ability to add my own lists and populate the names for those lists within the spreadsheet. I'm going to copy row 16 to row 17, and I'm going to modify my list that I've created. So I'm going to actively go into that cell and do segment list. I've decided I want to add another value to this list. The value I want to add is 21070. By simply selecting it and clicking the Add button, I've now added the list. So it's going to look for those segments that are between this range or this value itself. I'm going to close out my segment list. You'll notice that my list did not update. The balances did not change. I need to tell the tool to go and get fresh balances. This is based off of the cache that has been stored on the machine for this individual balance. It knew what my list consists of. So we need to tell the tool my list has changed. And we do that by right-clicking and choosing Spreadsheet Server, Clear Cache and Recalc Selected Cells. And now you'll notice that the balances have changed. So it's reflected now this new account that was added. I'm going to go ahead and create a second list now. I'm going to, again, on that copied row, delete the list that's there. I'm going to launch segment list. And I'm going to give this list a new name, my second list. Give it a description of my second list. And add that list in. For the beginning, I'm going to again do a range, so I'm going to type in the first value of that range, decimal, the last value of that range, and I'm going to add that into the list. I also have the ability to do what we call excludes. Now with an exclude, I need to change this operator from an OR to an AND, change the comparison to be not equal, and I need to apply the value that's not going to be equal. So 21505. I want all values between this and exclude this from that list. So I'll click the green plus, and now I have my list completed. I'll click the Add Insert to the cell, close the segment list, and you'll notice my segment list name is there, and the description has come through, and my balance has been updated reflecting that change. So I've shown you wildcards, I've shown you ranges, I've shown you the exclude. I'm going to copy row 14 to row 18, and I'm going to create a value list. So this list will consist of the first range in which I used 21010 through 21050, and include the next range, 21200 dot 21600, comma, exclude that one list that I did before, 21505, and close the value list with another bracket. And so I've created my own list here. I can also copy this list, and I could have used the two segment lists within that list, caret my list, comma, caret my second list. And there are my balances. So again, with segment lists, I can create and use many together. I can create a value list I can create ranges and use wildcards. Now with segment lists, as you build the lists themselves, you may want to consider doing some maintenance when it comes to the list. When you're working with the list, you may want to lock that list down so others can't change the list. By simply selecting the list within segment list, choosing the padlock, I can apply a password, and that list is now locked. It won't allow me to modify any of the values within there. The add and the remove buttons are grayed out. As a user, they can come in here and do a copy of the list, whatever name they wish to give it, and alter the copy to make it their own. But they do not have the flexibility and the capability to unlock the list unless they have the password. I'm going to close my segment list, and I'm going to come back to my spreadsheet. I'm going to copy row 14 to row 20 to 25. So I'm making several rows here. I'm going to prep by putting in some values, some ranges within column B. So first range is going to be the next range. The next. Okay, so now that I've typed in my ranges, and I think I have one extra zero here. Now that I've typed in my ranges, I've noticed I've gotten my balances. And I have two rows, rows 22 and 23, that actually have no balances for any of the given periods. Using the Spreadsheet Server tool, I can tell the software to hide those rows that are zero. So in this situation, while being in the spreadsheet, I can click the Hide Rows icon. It'll go through and read each row, and where the balance is zero for every GXL formula, it will simply hide those rows. So in this situation, I have hidden rows 22 and 23. By doing the Restore Rows icon, those values then will return. So if a new period or a new year is changed, the values will then update and recalc. It's upon the user's responsibility to unhide and hide the rows. The tool will not unhide if a balance now has activity in it. So I caution you when you include the functionality, and that you may want to be restore all rows before you go back and rehide again to make sure that the data is accurate for what you're looking to do. So we've briefly talked about the cache file when we were working with the segment list. Every time you open an Excel session, that cache file is calculated and built based on the balances that it finds within the spreadsheet. So those balances are stored local to each user's workstation in a file called cache. So here I'm going to go and view the cache file. The file itself can be quite large and can take a little while to open when it is being utilized. But it is capturing all the information for all Excel sessions that are being used. So if you have 2 to 3 workbooks open and you're using Spreadsheet Server in each workbook, this cache file will be calculating based on all of those books. The cache file will not clear itself or close until all Excel sessions are closed. So if you open a book at 8 a.m. in the morning and you open another book at 11 and another book at 3 and you close all but the one you opened at 3, you still have a cache file. That file will remain open during all Excel sessions. So you'll see here in the first column the account key. This is the breakdown of the segmentation for which you were returning balances. So we can see here I've returned many different rows, 116 worth of balances. That expand row functionality will put data within the cache file. You'll also notice as we scroll to the right within the cache file, I'm seeing balances for every period, not just periods 4, 5, and 6. The reason for that is Global's cache file will calculate all periods and return the data. It is quicker for us to return the data for all periods in a given year for that specific account key as opposed to going off and pulling back each individual period. It's less calls to the database for us to manage. When you're within the cache file, you can also come in and clear specific data. You can clear the data for a specific sheet by using the selection here at the top. You can clear the data at specific rows by simply selecting it and clearing the selected row. So if you want to refresh your cache data, you can do it individually, or you can tell the tool to clear it all. So I'm going to clear all of my cache. The file is now empty. When I close, all of my cache is recalculating, so all of my balances are up to date and new. So when should cache be cleared and recalced? Mainly when you're working in an open period. When you're looking at data within a period where balances are continuing to change, that's when you really want to focus on clearing the cache and recalculating. The cache itself for prior years are never going to change, or closed periods are never going to change unless adjustments are made, and at times those do happen. But in most situations, it's only in those active periods that you're working in. Okay, so at this time I have concluded the presentation, and I'm going to turn the presentation back over to Lisa Helms, and I thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. Just a couple of things to reiterate. This session was based on our V14 version. Some of you may still be on the V11, V12. If you are interested in upgrading, please contact your customer success rep. Also, if you notice any grayed areas in the ribbon, that just simply means that your license type did not allow you that particular capability or function. So, again, thank you, Daryl, for your insightful session, and thank you all for attending today's webinar. As I mentioned, if you do not know who your customer success rep is, because I've put this as a screen for you to look at, you can certainly contact us via our customer success generic mailbox, which is listed as well, customer success at Global Software, Inc. Remember to look for a short survey to follow and details on the upcoming webinar, Back to Basics Part 2. Have a great afternoon, everyone.